Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to this Efficiency for Access Design Challenge career conversation event, where we'll be focusing on youth leadership today. I'm really excited to be joined by some fantastic youth leaders. We've got Eduarda with us and Abubakar at the moment, and hopefully Nidhi will be joining us shortly. And between them, they have a really wide range of leadership experience in advocacy, activism, entrepreneurship, innovation, and more. So we'll be discussing the meaning of leadership, different forms of leadership, um, the importance of youth leadership, of course, how our speakers got into leadership and where they are today, how to cultivate leadership, and of course, some advice for any of you who are aspiring or current youth leaders. And anything else you would like to discuss with our speakers, this session is for you. So anything we would like to get into, as long as our speakers are happy, we can. So just a bit of housekeeping from me. The session is being recorded. I'll share the recording with you all on CrowdSolve today or tomorrow. And to find it, you can go to the events forum post, the one about this event, and it should be down at the bottom if you scroll down. So if you don't feel comfortable being recorded, then please keep your camera off and stay on mute. You can always ask questions that you have into the chat and participate that way. But having said that, if you are comfortable, I invite you to turn your cameras on. It's really great to see faces, and I think it helps to make a fruitful and engaging conversation. I think if we were in person, we might be sitting around in a circle, having a lovely time. So having cameras on is probably the closest we can get to that. If you do have questions for our speakers today, please raise your hand. I'll invite you to come off mute, and you can also put questions in the chat, as I've mentioned, or comments in the chat, and I encourage our speakers to participate there as well. You can send messages to everyone or directly to me if you would prefer. And I have some questions prepared for our speakers, and some interactive polls for everyone. But this session is for you, like I mentioned, so please do make the most of it by asking any questions that you have. We're very open to it becoming all of your questions. That would be great. So yeah, no silly questions, of course. That's all the admin from me. So let's get into it. Hopefully Nidhi can join us a bit later on, but if not, I'm really confident that Abubakar and Eduarda have us covered on some amazing experience and leadership advice and to share with you all. So I'll ask our speakers to introduce themselves. We'll have a few polls and dive into questions as well. Eduarda, can I start with you? Could you introduce yourself and your experience in youth leadership, please?
Sure. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's nice meeting everyone. Thanks for taking the time for being here. So I started very young in the climate space. When I was 12, I was already deeply caring about this topic. And later on, when I was going to college, I was very passionate about, policy making and how we can find solutions through the government and public sector for climate change. And in this process, studying climate, understood that energy is responsible for 2/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions and thought that that was the best way to tackle climate change. So ever since, I've been involved in many ways in the youth movement. So back in Brazil, where I'm from, I was part of a youth-led organization that was one of the first ones to bring young people to the COPs, to the Conference of the Party. And I think I learned a lot through, activism, advocacy, and mobilizing people and raising awareness to the topic of like why energy is important, why as young people we still have the power to make change in our communities. We don't really need to be a president to make change in our surroundings. So I think that was very important for me in my process. Nowadays, I work for the Climate Investment Funds. It's a multilateral fund, and I've always worked for international organizations. So any questions you may have more on the, working with governments and how to work with, international cooperation in the energy space, I'm here for you. And also feel free to connect later. I always love hearing about different experiences and seeing how I can, add some value to your journeys in this space.
Thank you, Eduarda. That's wonderful, and thanks for that invitation. for everyone to connect. Abubakar, I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's good to hear from my mentor first. And one of the amazing thing I'm of course happy to share stage with Eduarda today. My name is Abubakar Shuaibu, and I'm a youth climate activist and advocate for energy transition in Nigeria. And I'm the founder and CEO at Green Energy Mission Africa, which is a youth-led non-profit organization that advocates for energy transition and energy access in Africa, starting with Nigeria, and apparently one of the Nigerian youth delegates for COPs, and actually one of the leading young people in Nigeria advocating for energy transition. And what I do mostly is research and innovation, policy advocacy, where we engage with governments and various stakeholders in the energy space, and of course, trainings and awareness programs at the grassroots communities in Nigeria. And we actually I've actually engaged with so many young people across the world, which inspires me to, of course, start this journey. I started when I was in my university level. That was about 3 years ago. And I thought as an electrical engineering student, where the world is going into transition and renewable energy technologies, and looking at the pragmatic diagram of Nigeria and African continent, with the lack of energy access and more vulnerable to climate change, I thought, as a young person, what can I do to bring about change? What can I do to contribute my quota toward addressing the two most pressing challenges in Africa, which is energy access and, of course, the climate change. So, and I started, of course, at a very, very low. I didn't know where I'm going, but finally, I thank God. Now I can be able to have said that in the past 2, 3 years, I'm able to achieve a lot, and I'm able to meet so many young people and so many stakeholders in this space, and gaining more understanding and more skills, of course, in the journey. And of course, today, like I mentioned, it's an exciting to share the stage with Eduarda, and she is one of the global youth leaders I've known, and one of the people that truly supported my journey, and of course still supporting my journey and guiding me through. And of course, it's amazing to have you all here, and I look forward to having a fruitful conversation together.
Thank you, Abubakar. Yeah, it's wonderful to hear such motivated and inspired and engaged kind of journeys and conversations in this space. Now we've heard a bit about our speakers. I'm sure you're all excited to get into the discussion, but to get the ball rolling, I've set up a quick poll just to get your initial thoughts from everyone and responses about what leadership means to you. So I'll launch that now. Hopefully you can all see that. Please let me know if you can't. You can always pop comments in the chat as well if you're struggling. So the question is, what do you think about when you think of leadership? And 3 words that come to mind. So no pressure, no right and wrong answers here, just to get kind of initial thoughts and spark that conversation would be great to hear. I'll give you a few moments to do that. And Eduarda and Abubakar, if you would like to contribute as well.
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful, thank you. I'll give you a few more seconds to pop your thoughts in, everyone. And I see that Nidhi is joining us. Okay, I hope you can all see the poll. Hi Nidhi, welcome. I'm not sure if you're speaking, but I can't hear you if you are. Okay, so we have a few responses to our poll now. Let's see what we said. Okay, we've got changing society for the better. Mentorship, supporting others to grow in their careers and share opportunities and tools for others to get there. Responsibility, nice. And create another leader. Interesting. I think that ties to the mentorship point. That's great. So I just share the results with you now. Nidhi, have you been able to connect all right? Are you with us? I see Nidhi's put a question in the chat. It looks like she was trying to speak. Okay, I expect Nidhi needs to leave and rejoin, so we'll keep going. Lovely. So yeah, great responses. Thanks everyone who contributed to those. I think we have a flavor of like what's coming up around leadership and some of the initial thoughts. So it'd be great to hear from our speakers what leadership means to them. So can I start with you, Abubakar, this time?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think for me, when it comes to leadership, I think it's about commitment and dedication toward changing society. Of course, creating an enabling environment where more leaders will leverage on and changing society better than we met it. So I think for me, when it comes to leadership, that word comes into my mind.
Wonderful. There's a nice broad definition there. I love that. Eduarda, could you share a bit about what leadership means to you?
Sure. I wrote in the poll mentorship because I think, and I appreciate Abubakar for raising that point, and I'm so glad you see me as a mentor. But I think that, it's just, I think that, and not myself included at the moment yet, but when you get yourself to like higher positions and seniority in the energy space or any other sector, I think that true leadership is when you're able to be in these spaces and still carve time to help others. So not just those like around you, but there's so many young people that reach out to me on LinkedIn asking for time to have conversations, and I always happily like set up these calls. And I see that doesn't happen at at other spaces, and that's, I think, not a position or a seniority thing. I think it's a personal thing. Some people, sometimes CEOs, are open to having these conversations even though they're the busiest, but they just see the value in contributing to someone else's journey. So I think that, true leaders, they find the time to reflect on what they have done right and how they can teach others how to get there. And I think that comes especially for, women in the energy space. It's a very male-dominated sector. So for the women that are already like thriving in their careers and have already, reached this level of visibility and success, I think it's so important for them to take a step back and just look at how they can bring more women to these positions, to these spaces, which I think is even more common. I see more women leaders doing that than in other sectors, because they acknowledge that the space is very hard to get to, and they just really take time and invest on other people.
Thanks, Eduarda. Yeah, and thank you all for being here today. I think that's a wonderful point, and I think what you're doing today is part of what you're expressing. So thank you, and thank you to all our speakers for being here. Nidhi, welcome. Sorry that we weren't able to hear you earlier. Hopefully we've got that sorted now.
Yes, hi Rachel, hi everyone.
Hi, thanks for being here. So we've got into the conversation, as you can probably hear, but I'd love to ask you to introduce yourself and your experience in youth leadership for the students and for everyone here.
Thanks, Rachel, for the opportunity. It's really nice to meet all of you. My name is Nidhi Pant. I am from India. I run an organization which is called Science for Society. I started this when I was back in college. So I've been doing this for past 10 years. We started out of a lab where when we were studying chemical engineering, we decided we wanted to use our scientific knowledge in service of people. And that's where we started working with smallholder farmers and addressing various challenges faced by them in the value chain. Currently, we're working in food processing. So we help farmers become processors by providing them technology, access to finance, and market linkage. Now we are a 130 member team, and we have raised series couple of rounds of funding. We are profitable. We work with 300,000 farmers. So it's been a 10 years journey for me. I'm very passionate about having youth voice as well as participation, because I could find my purpose a little early in life, and it has helped me really get fulfillment in work, and also create organization which is financially sustainable and also creates impact. So I'm looking forward to this dialogue.
Thanks, Nidhi. It's wonderful to have you with us. Thanks for taking the time. And as you probably heard, as you were joining, we were just talking a bit about what leadership means to each of you. So if you could offer some comments on what leadership means to you, that would be great to complement the other answers that we've had.
For me, leadership means that listening to the voices unheard. These could start with being of the voice of the customer, voice of the most vulnerable people, voice of women, of people who are historically disadvantaged in some way or the other, voice of people who are in poverty. So listening to the voices unheard, and also helping them get seat at the table. So whether streamlining funding for them, or helping them work with multinationals. So I think we are a bridge between those as well as the real world. Leadership for me is also to be inclusive as well as sustainable. So leadership is also about the environment. We don't do anything at cost of the environment or something, or a model where we historically we do not put people at the center. So for me, a lot of leadership is about people and planet.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear, and interesting that you all have slightly different definitions of leadership, but they all have those kind of common themes and threads of listening, like you said, Nidhi, and supporting. Great. So I'd like to ask you all to dig in a bit more how you got into leadership. And I'm curious as well to hear whether you aspired to be a leader, because I have a little theory that lots of leaders didn't necessarily aspire to that. So could we start with Eduarda this time?
Yeah, I don't know, that's actually a great question, because when you think of it, it's not something you choose to do or to be. It's more like how you personally see the world and how you want to make changes. For me, it's just and I remember like giving a talk about leadership many years ago. I think I was like 22 or 23, but already talking about it. For me, it's the perception of understanding what is the challenge of your community and just taking matters into your own hands. So I think that a lot of people are always like trying to find a purpose. Everyone, you don't have to be young, but everyone's looking for a purpose for life. And I think that once you just find purpose in helping others and identifying one cause that you want to make changes, doesn't need to be climate, it can be anything around you. And just like go there, throw yourself there and really try to make a difference. I think that you're already showing leadership. I think you're just demonstrating that you care. and just like creating a movement of people. And there are so many incredible examples of people like around me that I've seen doing that. You don't need, you know, money or like a degree or anything. It's just like all about how you want to transform other people's lives by really taking action.
Thanks, Eduarda. Abubakar, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, of course. For me, I think I can say I come from a society or a country where bad governments and bad leadership is a case study for me in Nigeria. And since coming up, growing up since childhood, what I see, things are not working all right. Bad governments, a lot of corruption, a lot of things are going down here, which of course are contrary to what I see growing up. So I feel like we cannot sit down and continue to complain or look at it from the other angle. But I think we need to make things have to get right, you know, way or the other. And who are the people to make it right? We are the ones. So I feel like it's important since my early age to start learning from leadership, to start taking responsibility role, so that in the near future, when we grow older or when we grow up a little bit, we can be able to find ourselves in a leadership position where we change a lot of policies, we influence a lot of things, of course, making people's life a better and more better. So I think for me, leadership is necessary, and I think it's for my ambition in life to make a significant impact to change the narratives in my society. I think that's for me most important. I find it as something that is an obligation to me, coming up and growing up in a society like of our own in Nigeria.
Thank you, Abubakar. Nidhi?
Yes, I never aspired to be a leader, neither right now also we know the complete definition of leadership. We are also evolving, and at least I am learning every day. But one very important part of my leadership journey has been persistence and grit. So showing up every day, just being at it, and to rally the team along and believe in something. And show up for the community. I think that is a very big part, which I think differentiates a leader from others, is where we completely believe in the cause, you believe in the solution, you're married to the problem and not the solution. You're married to the fact that you need to solve this, and in this process you also want to inspire others. For me, leadership journey also has been a lot of self-discovery to be a better human. I think as you, when I was very young, I came with a lot of ego. I never would approach any problem with complete honesty or integrity or I think I was just trying to ascertain that the solution that I'm giving is completely the right one in terms of technology. But in my leadership journey, what I also learned is that it's important to bring in other voices, have be vulnerable, be authentic, and have like your moral compass in the right direction. So I think it's also like a big self-discovery journey where you find your value systems, where you are tested. But I think for me, the biggest part always is resilience.
Thank you, Nidhi. Yeah, that's I think that's maybe something we could come back to as resilience. That seems like a kind of key thought that perhaps has been important to lots of leaders and lots of you. And yeah, it was great to hear about your kind of more about how you think of leadership and what leadership means to you, what drew you to leadership. It sounds like it's a lot about values and commitment and passion and duty and being authentic to yourselves, which maybe isn't necessarily what initially springs to mind when you think leadership, especially if it's not in this kind of green climate space. If you're thinking more like president, perhaps that's not what comes to mind. So yeah, that was really interesting. Thank you for sharing. Everyone, I just remind you, please, if you have questions throughout, please raise your hands, please pop them in the chat. I'm sure you've got some great questions for our speakers, so don't let me take over all the time if you have things to ask. I have another poll for you now to start thinking about some different forms and different types of leadership. Let me see if I can just share that with you. Okay. So we've got the question, what are some different forms and types of leadership? So again, just kind of thoughts off the top of your head. It would be interesting to hear. And I expect we have quite a range in the room. So please share those. Hopefully you can all see the poll there. And feel free to contribute as well, Nidhi, Abubakar and Eduarda. I'll give you a few moments for that. Does anyone have any questions for our speakers while we wait? Just while you're doing that. Yeah, Abdulaziz, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Rachel. So I wanted to ask, right? Being a leader is not quite an easy task. It's sometimes quite challenging, demanding, and all of that. So you tend to face challenges during that period or during your time as a leader. So how do you overcome those challenges as a leader, considering the fact that you have to work with a number of people, be it students, mentees, people in your communities, and all of that, balancing your tight schedule, your personal time. I have so many people that are leaders that are probably married, in school, and all of that. So how do you manage to infuse the both of them, like your personal life and also trying to satisfy or carry the people along as a leader? How do you navigate the whole thing?
That's a great question, Abdulaziz. Thank you. Eduarda, go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say I can comment on that, but I would love to hear Nidhi and Abubakar as well. I think that's, an excellent question and one that I ask myself every day. I think we're always every day growing in that aspect. I don't do it perfectly. I think time management is really a skill, and I've tried multiple things. Some things work for me, others don't. But, for example, I don't have kids at the moment, and I always wonder and ask myself, like, wow, if I had children right now, how would I be able to be managing all the things that I do plus a family? So that's definitely and for women, that's a definite constraint for career growth and many times. But what I would say is that I think trying to organize yourself and be able to let go of control and delegate and ask for help is already a gift. Asking for help is very hard sometimes because you have all these responsibilities, you think you can manage, sometimes you created an organization, or many of you here are creating a specific solution or technology, and sometimes you need help, and allowing others to, enter your own professional space and idea and collaborate with you can be also very challenging. So I think that that's one. The other important point I think is just talking about mental health. I participated recently on a leadership training for women, and it was so interesting how we were all from different ages, different countries, different backgrounds, and everyone was talking about being exhausted and burnout and how to do better time management. And what I think is a common characteristic for many leaders is that you just want to hug the world and do everything all at once. So even the ability of saying no is, I think, one of the things I try to work on the most in my life, because you want to say yes to everything, to everyone, to all the opportunities, to all initiatives that are out there, because you want to make impact, right? You want to genuinely help others. But sometimes and I have so many friends that say this, and I repeat that to me, repeat this to my friends, that in order to, save the world, we need to also take care of ourselves. Like, to take care of others, we need to first take care of ourselves. So I think that the first step is just looking at your own, time management, balance. Am I having enough time for myself, for my family, for my loved ones? And then you move from that. But it's important to block time for that as well.
Thanks, Eduarda. Nidhi, Abubakar, would you like to answer the question as well?
Yes, I think a lot of what Eduarda covered is what even I would say is that saying no is a gift. I think ruthless prioritization is so important. But also, I would like to acknowledge, at least this is, at least for me, what I've realized is that this work really requires time. Like, if today I'm present here, I am skipping something like in my personal life, and taking time out of my schedule. So a lot of time just acknowledging the fact that uh, we are here because we enjoyed this. We really want to do this. Like, if your energy, like, I think more than time management, I would look at like an energy management, where doing things that you actually something which is more intuitive to you, which comes naturally to you, uh, do that as well. But procrastinating on things which are difficult, prioritizing that and completing that is so important. A lot of times, I think a lot of our anxiety or delays are just because uh, we we are procrastinating on things that are very difficult. So one is that, like, have your energy management in the right place. Do not procrastinate on things that are more difficult. Do things which are which comes more naturally to you, and things that you enjoy a lot, so you don't feel it like a burden, or you don't feel it as like a task. Or sometimes I think the whole debate about 80 hours work week versus like work-life balance, a lot of time that is navigated just because you love doing something so much. And I think the third thing is, and the last thing is that always ask for help. Do not think that, if you acknowledge that you don't know something, uh, you would be judged. I think when you're young, even if you are considered like the not the smartest person in the room, but you ask and clarify things that you want, I think it's so helpful in a long term way. But apart from that, you can always look up, like, there are so many influencers now and so many books on productivity, uh, like calendar management, building a second brain, like a lot of books I can recommend. That is more tactical part, but I think these things are a little bit more important.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nadia. I think you literally said almost everything, but to add, I think collaboration is one of the key things, of course, that of course very important in leadership. And one of the important thing, of course, is sacrifices. I think as a young people, I think a lot of things that comes into my mind is a lot of sacrifice that I do make in the daily life. I think we are in an age where you need yourself the most, and many young people need you again. So I think balancing between people needs and your own needs is, of course, very important. And I think this is what I can add. And trust me, for each sacrifice, you'll find it in your way along the line. And of course, one of the key things that we miss as young people, as young leaders, is of course continuous learning, and of course looking out for support and looking out for more mentorships, building ourselves better, and of course reaching out to people for support, and of course putting an ecosystem where you do collaborative effort and giving opportunity to people to try their ideas and try their own logs in a lot of situations. So I think this will help in the long run.
Thank you, everyone. Some fantastic points there. Hope that helped answer your question, Abdulaziz. I'm sure. Well, I know it did. It helped me, even though it wasn't my question. Thank you. So I've just ended the poll. What are some different forms and types of leadership? So we have democratic, autocratic, bureaucratic, servant, transactional, transformation, laissez-faire, charismatic, activism, advocacy, mobilizing people and communities, active and passive leadership, visionary and independent leadership, democratic, autocratic, some more of those coming up again. That's amazing. What a huge range of different forms of leadership. Thank you for contributing those. Do jump in and raise hands if you have questions throughout. But to dig a bit more into that question that we just had in the poll, I'd love to ask our speakers to tell us a bit more about a form of leadership that resonates with you, maybe from one of those, or maybe a different kind of leadership. And if you identify with more than one, it would be really interesting to hear some kind of comparisons, some similarities and differences between the two kinds. So I'll invite Nidhi to go first.
Yes, I think I would like to mention this heroic leadership and adaptive leadership. I think that did not come up, but there is this type of when you start, when you're very early stage in your organizational journey or whenever you're building something, it's a lot of heroic leadership in the sense because you are the one driving the organization, solutions, getting things done. So a lot of focus is like, what is your strength in getting things done? That's why like a lot of investors, funders, back on in early days back teams and not like the idea. So I think when I was also starting up, my leadership style was very heroic in nature, where everything was around me. I was telling everyone, but I think gradually I have transitioned out to a lot more adaptive leadership. Adaptive leadership means that I don't have to necessarily be present or be the last word in every task. A lot of times we have empowered people who now can take decisions, and also that is something I learned very hard way. People will not take decisions, will not have the complete ownership if you don't give them an opportunity for failure. What I realized was that like a lot of my team was not taking the ownership because they did not want to fail, and then they would come to me for everything, and that was becoming a big challenge in terms of scalability. And that's when we decided that it's okay, and we decided thresholds that the type of risks that we will allow our teams to take, we will allow, like, empower them so that they and slowly when they started like seeing that they can now take those decisions, they also it built their confidence. So I think this now I moved to a lot more adaptive leadership where I have innate trust on those people. I live initially I've lived with their failures, even if it has hurt us financially. I make sure that they have a voice in the room, and every time people are not just looking at me for the final say. So I think these two type of leadership style has been a lot very helpful for me. And I think the last thing that I would want to say is that when I was very young, what actually helped me like a leader that was very hungry. I don't know what is the right word, very ambitious as a leader, where I used to just attend all the different types of programs, accelerator, incubators, like seminars, because it gave me so much to learn. And I believed in this, that I've come so far because all those learnings have compounded. just what we learned, like, and doing the same thing again and again, gave has now shown the results. So I think I've been initially very ambitious leader and very hungry, that, and also someone who was very having a lot of FOMO, fear of missing out. So I used to just be present everywhere and try to have those sacrifices. So I think these are the 2 points from my end.
Thank you, Nidhi. And that was really great to hear. And they're not forms of leadership that I've heard of before, but it was great to hear your insights into that. And I think tied into some of your answers as well about time management and keeping up with commitments, where you need to delegate and you need to collaborate, and you kind of through doing that you empower people and build that trust and that kind of commitment and leadership among others as well, and not just yourself. That was really inspiring. Thank you. Eduarda, can I hand over to you?
Sure, and I loved what Nidhi just said, because I can see a lot of that answer translated to my personal story. I think, though, that when you ask me this question, and I don't think I've ever been asked this question, like, how do I identify in which realm of leadership? I think that for me, looking somebody, one of the types people said was like charismatic and etc. And I remember, like, in college studying about, political representation, and there's a lot of like symbolic representation in leadership. And I think that I feel like I fall in that area of being a symbolic leader, in the sense that there aren't a lot of people that look like me and do what I do in the spaces that I am. So I think that my responsibility is to keep like breaking these barriers to bring other women. And I really, use and like advocacy as a measure of exerting my leadership, because advocacy is not just, lobbying a bill in Congress, but it's also bringing to the attention of decision makers something that is relevant and pertinent to their work responsibilities. So one thing that I do like very often when I'm walking in a meeting and I'm asked to speak or to make like remarks, I always ask people to look around them and see who's missing. Like, who's missing here from this space, from this table? Like, just asking this question and making people reflect on their own is very powerful. Most people, they just go day to day to their jobs, and they don't even stop to think like, what could I do to make this space more diverse? And, diversity brings better solutions. Like, there's so many studies that prove that. So just, using this type of narrative to make small changes in these environments, and especially, and Abubakar also is in many of these spaces and doing like breaking the same barriers, and just being young and being able to speak in these spaces is such a privilege, that I think just trying to open more doors and make ourselves be heard, coming from the countries that we come from and the energy challenges that we face and that our country faces, is just, I think, a very important form of symbolic leadership too.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks, Eduarda. And then a really interesting and kind of different way to think about advocacy. As you said, Abubakar, could you share a bit about the form of leadership that resonates with you, or maybe a couple?
For me, I think it's advocacy, and of course, we need to bring the attention of the people in position of power. We need to present to them backable data, and we need to show them that, of course, this is what is happening on the ground, and these are the things that as leaders or people in position of power should do to make changes that to resonate our realities and that will really transform our society or communities for better. And I think the best way for now as a young people is to, for me personally, I think advocacy is what we can do the most in our age to make a little differences. We can see how young people and how we can be able to organize ourselves, push for policies, push for changes, push for a lot of things, and it works a lot. And of course, I can tell you a lot of things happens because of me in the space in Nigeria, even though I underestimate some things, but I fail to understand that at some point it's because of what I'm able to do or what kind of things that I'm able to do coming up with a society, a very remote society, growing up, breaking the barriers, coming into the national stage, meeting with the top leaders, showing them from in reality that this is what we are facing as young people and this is what we can do. And of course, most importantly, how young people can be given opportunity to showcase their talent and of course contribute their quota in the journey. And I think a lot of things has happened, and I'm very glad and very grateful with what I'm seeing today through advocacy. And like Eduarda mentioned, um, you can underestimate what's the power, what you're doing, but of course you influence a lot of things not knowing. So for me, advocacy at this at this very stage of our life is what resonates with my leadership. And one thing, of course, like Eduarda mentioned, collaboration, and of course, um, giving other people opportunity to contribute their quota, delegation, just overseeing and making sure that things went right. I think is the way I do most of things. Most of the times, I'm not the one I'm not the one coming up with a lot of ideas. I'm not the one truly executing them, but it's other young people. What I do is I learn from their ideas and I take from their experiences and perspectives, and at the end of the day, we make things right.
Thanks, Abubakar. I think that's a really important answer and gets at some of the themes I've been hearing throughout your answers about humility and recognizing that you don't have all the answers and that other people have so much to give, and kind of seeing that and advocating for that as part of your leadership, where traditionally maybe this says a lot about my ideas of leadership growing up, but that's not necessarily what would have sprung to mind for me. Thank you. I have another poll now about what form of leadership most appeals. So kind of building on those answers that we've had. Let me just launch that now. Yeah, so the question is, what form of leadership most appeals to you, or do you think there is most need for? So I realize, having heard these answers now, that this is a difficult question to answer. There might be many difficult, impossible to choose one, but just the one that kind of sparked the most interest and inspiration for you, maybe, or one that you felt is particularly important. I will give you a few moments for that now. And again, just open up for questions. If anyone has questions, please pop them in the chat. Please raise your hands. If you have follow-ups to anything that we've discussed, that would be great to hear from you. And I know that Eduarda will be needing to leave us soon, around 3 or around the hour. So if you have any questions for Eduarda in particular, now is your chance.
Also, no pressure. Like I said, like feel free to connect later. I hope to be in touch with all of you regardless.
Okay, I'll give you a few more moments. Perhaps as people are answering that, we could move on to another of the questions that I prepared. So I'd like to ask what you think is unique and exciting about youth leadership in particular, and why you think it's important. And I realize I've made some assumptions that you do think those things, but from our conversation today, I'm quite confident that that's a correct assumption. So yeah, shall we start with you, Eduarda? What you think is unique and exciting, and the importance of youth leadership?
Well, I have witnessed young people do a lot of incredible things. So I think what's unique and exciting is the perspective that comes from young people and the fact that what I think is incredible is that when we're living now a poly crisis, there's so many horrible things happening in the world altogether. And I think we have a real crisis of leadership. And what I think is missing from current leaders is to really get together and practice active listening and just understanding each other. Obviously, that's not the solution to all the problems, but what I feel is that like young people, they just have this ease of getting along when you get to like, you know, these international convenings and you have young people from all different parts of the world, all walks of life. I think the exchanges are just so genuine in the intent of making things better. And I think the current leaders today, the ones who are like, I don't know, maybe 50 plus, they didn't have these opportunities back in the day. Like being in these spaces and doing these exchanges in a very multicultural way were not possible. And I think it's just so enriching and speaks to the power of like getting young people all together, like in the same space to exchange, to, you know, replicate solutions. So that I think is very unique. And I always, you know, whenever I'm talking about like how important young people are in the process, like in tackling climate change, for example, there were some things that happened that many people are not that aware of. But for example, I think, you know, in 2015, during the Paris Agreement negotiations, it was Yango, the youth constituency for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change that organizes COP, that included the word, you know, education in the Paris Agreement. They were really fighting for climate education. They talked to so many leaders, and it was a group of young people that were trying to, you know, advocate for having climate education being a part of the Paris Agreement. So sometimes we take these small steps for granted, but they are just so important for creating domestic policy, for example. And now the debate on climate education is a lot bigger. And I think that there's always like ways of us looking back and seeing, oh, well, there were young people that were behind that negotiation on the background, and really just, you know, looking at how they could make something impactful come from the agreement that would directly benefit the next generation of leaders. So I think young people, you know, that for me is the uniqueness of, you know, youth leadership, is just thinking ahead and acting together and collaborating and seeing how our diversity can really reflect to something very unique in the process.
Thank you, Eduarda. Great answer. I see we have a question in the chat. It's from Marjan, who says, in leadership, we often face problems when the people who work under a leader couldn't come up with the same vision with the leader. How do you face that issue? Eduarda, I know you, oh, sorry, Nidhi, go ahead.
Then I can take that up, because a lot of time we face that. I think it's also because sometimes you lack like a shared vision. So we also understand that people who work with us, sometimes their priorities are different. Their which could just a lot of times include like having like a work-life balance. There so also sometimes what we've seen, that when there is a mission or a vision misalignment, or I think if they don't intuitively believe in like what we're doing, sometimes that is also a very big problem. I think at least for me, I've been very honest in accepting that there is a misalignment, and letting it go, and giving people the right to also choose, and recognizing that what is the gap. If you're aligned, and then there is like a challenge of like coping up or motivation, then those things, I think those challenges are difficult to deal with. But if it is a skill, so I think, just to reiterate, there could be three types of, you know, misalignments that I've seen. Either it is a skill-based misalignment, where you require someone with a particular type of skill set, and they are not working but have a shared vision. Then sometimes we can be a lot more patient. Second types is that if there is a values or a mission type of misalignment, I think then there is no solution and it is good to part ways. And third type is sometimes people take a little bit time to adapt to, what the vision is. Basically, they believe in it, but to translate that into execution takes time. And I think in that case, also having being a lot more patient is very important.
If
Thank
I may.
you, Nidhi. Yeah, Eduarda, go ahead.
Yes, and then I could be my final words, and then I'll say goodbye to everyone. But maybe a point that I would ask you back is, in my experience, I think that, and I love that we're discussing leadership. I think that being in a senior position or managing people or being higher up doesn't mean you're a leader. I think like exercising and practicing leadership is like something that we all can do. And I think that I've seen a lot of like true leadership come not from the people on the top or decision makers, but from the people that would be like traditionally in the bottom, like the people that are respecting the rules. And like I said, I believe so much in like leadership that comes from like communities or from, young people for that reason. You don't need 30 years of experience. Sometimes something that you lived, in your own personal journey can affect the way that you treat others and how you take matters into your own hands. So I would just say that because if you are clashing with the style of vision, it could be also that that person doesn't, exert their leadership in the best way. And depending on how much that affects you, I always, think that people should consider moving to a place where there's a mission alignment, because it's very sad to be having like all these thoughts and visions about your career and what you want to do, and just be with a person that is completely against it or doesn't understand it or doesn't even have vision, because a lot of people don't have vision like for how an organization has to look like or how a certain like sector field has to look like. So I think that aligning yourself to people that share the same values will make you stronger as a leader, and will enable you to perform better at your job, at any particular initiative that you're leading yourself. So I'll stop here, and thanks everyone for joining and hope to be in touch. Thank you, Rachel, for moderating, and thanks to the panelists. This was wonderful, and I hope you have a great rest of your days.
Thank you, Eduarda, very much. Bye. Okay, let me share the results with you of the poll. I realise we're jumping around a bit. Hopefully that's not too confusing. So the poll was, what form of leadership most appeals to you, or do you think there is most need for? We have coach style leadership or mentoring, democratic leadership, situational leadership and servant leadership, and symbolic leadership. So that's great to hear a really wide range of different styles and types of leadership, inspiring and motivating you all. Thank you for sharing those. Abubakar, do you have anything to add to Nidhi and Eduarda's points on the question in the chat? Abubakar, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Already said most of the things, but it's like a printing seat for the people. Young leaders bring fresh ideas and energy on the table, which is very important. It, of course, it's often unique, not afraid to take risks and to challenge the status quo. Mention, they are old school, and of course, they are old school perspectives of how we think we can, of course, think most importantly, like my colleagues, and there can't be a future for us without us.
So you were breaking up a bit there at the end. Could you maybe just repeat the last few things that you said?
think, like Eduarda mentioned, and they are all good, of course, and of how best we can shape our future and look at how the emerging new world is truly emerging. As usual, used to say there should be. So I think that is very important.
Thank you. It looks like we've lost Nidhi again, so hopefully she'll be joining back. But this session is for an hour and a half, so we've got 25 minutes left. Maybe just with you, Abubakar. So I hope that's okay if you can take the heat of all the questions that we might be sending your way. Do any of the students, do you have any more questions, any follow-up questions? Do you put them in the chat or raise your hands? Abdulaziz, go ahead.
Okay, as a leader, right, you need people, right? People with talent, people that know what they're doing, people that have something to contribute to your team, right? And so when you're bringing on people to your team, you're looking at talent, you're looking at what they have to bring. And so it doesn't matter if they're really that educated or not. As long as they're bringing something to the table, you can make them part of your team, right? So how do you now convince individuals?
I think we might have lost Abdulaziz. That's a shame. Hopefully he'll be able to rejoin, and hopefully you can all hear me and it's not me that's having the connectivity issues. Perhaps while we're waiting,
like those that are not really that educated, those in rather be challenging because they might not want to be. So how
sorry,
can you hear me now?
Abdulaziz, I think maybe it was my connectivity issues, possibly. I
Okay,
can
so
hear you now, yes.
I was saying, as a leader, you need a lot of people in your team, whether educated or not. You need people with diverse talents, skills, and all of that. So how do you convince people, especially those in rural communities and remote dwellers, to be a part of your team? Because for you to execute a project successfully, you need a lot of people, and you need people to share the same vision with you. And sometimes or at times you might be dealing with people that are already leaders in their community or in their own settings. So how do you convince them to be part of your own team and see your vision to participate or bring about what you aim to bring about or change you aim to deliver to that particular community? So what are the challenges when it comes to putting a team together of different personality, different settings, different background, culture, education, and ideas? So how do you navigate that? How do you go around that and make sure you end up with a very good, successful team?
Thank you, Abdulaziz. Abubakar, I think you're our only remaining panelist, so if you could take that one, that would be great.
So I think it's a great question, and one thing that we need to all understand is we are young people, and being a leader, I think the only difference is just a bit for me, and for me sometimes it doesn't make any difference. But what makes different is how you truly approach the situation and what kind of perspective, fresh idea you bring into the narratives in order to have a common ground. For me, you don't need an educative or the most educated person to make a difference. What you need is someone that really committed to the vision. And sometimes what we face as a challenge as young people is the ability to make the case personal to the person that you're bringing on board to support you. For instance, climate crisis. How about explaining to that person you're bringing on board that this is a collective effort that we need to make in order to make this collective challenge that we all face as young people. And I think making it personal and making it a fair truth, like you're not supporting me or you're not supporting my organization, but you're supporting a shared and common problem that we face, and together we can actually contribute to shaping and changing the narratives and eradicating the problems. And one thing again, of course, that is very important. Leaders are built, not we need to make new leaders. And I think we don't need to see that we have to bring the most educated or people that knows what they're doing the most. So what is the most important is how you are able to transform an uneducated or unskilled young person to a skilled young person. And I think this is one of the benefits that youth need to see in joining or supporting an organization that is led by young people. Access to mentorship, access to overall skill, and access to opportunities. And of course, getting to know things better, and of course, understanding the global perspectives on a lot of issues, and deepening knowledge and understanding on the issues around specific challenge that the organization is trying to solve. So I think that's might give a lot of a little bit of answer to your question.
Thank you, Abubakar. Following on from that, I'd be curious to hear to what extent you think you bring people on board who already share your vision and your mission, and to what extent you feel maybe that you change and shape someone's mission and vision to align to create that kind of that momentum and that shared commitment. If you're speaking, Abubakar, we can't hear you.
I think you were breaking. I would like to I mean, if you can repeat it, I'll be very glad.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. The question was about whether you feel that sort of most people that you bring on board already share your mission and your vision, or to what extent it might be that you're kind of shaping that mission and their vision, and as you mentioned, kind of framing it in a way that speaks to them and speaks to the wider problem rather than just you as a leader and your vision. Is that a bit clearer?
Yeah, so I think for me, what I do the most, I work with a lot of young people since I start my journey. And one thing I always look is to find young people. I don't care about how educative or how skilled you seems to be. But what's most important is how committed and how you've seen the problem that we are committed to solving, and that is aligned to our vision, that it is personal and you are committed towards addressing that particular challenge. For me, that's what I look into always when working with young people or onboarding young people to work together in my organization. And moving forward, if you come into our office, or if you see how we do our things as a team, you can't, of course, believe that I am the CEO also, because all of us are working. You cannot, of course, identify, say, okay, this is a leader, it doesn't matter. We all work together. I mean, it's a pre-zone and it's a pre-perspective. And sometimes I point someone, okay, today you are going to be the CEO. You assume yourself as a CEO, or I'm going to make you the CEO for the rest of this week. You decide on everything, bring in your ideas, bring in your perspective, or hi, team, this is a challenge I'm seeing. This is an opportunity I'm seeing. How do you think we can actually go about this? And trust me, things goes well. And what I always learn and see is that the people that we underestimated tend to have the most talent and tends to be the people with the most ideas. So that is why always it's important to look at people that share the commitment and see that issue and challenge as personal to them, and they are passionate about it. That's the most important thing.
Thank you. That's really inspiring. that's something that you do in your organization. That's amazing about challenging someone to be the CEO for the day or the week. What a great way to bring on kind of new ideas and empower people and advocate as well. Thank you for sharing that. So we have a question in the chat. It's from Innocent saying, thank you so much to share his skills and leadership. What Innocent would like to ask is, when you're in charge of leading community or a team or a group, if you find out that the community is not happy for your leadership, as a good leader, can you take the position to give them the space, or are there any other ways to save the problem in leadership whenever you found that the community is not happy with you? That's a really interesting question. I'd be glad to hear your insights, Abubakar.
I think I've never found myself in that position, but I think there was a situation where I and my team was leading a research project in one community in my hometown, in one community in Nigeria, where we tend to identify the consumer service quality enhancement on off-grid tariff. The community were gotten mini grids, and we had thought that the challenges, and we were funded by the Rural Education Fund under the World Bank to do a research to identify the challenges and the problems over there. So I think one thing I learned is that working in collaboration with the community leaders and making the community people taking the ownership of the project. Okay, look, we are in your community and this is your community and this is something for you. What do you think about it and how do you see best that we approach this? I think making the community people feel ownership of the project and making it personal to them that this is your something and we are just here to support you and we are here to make your life better and we are here to see that this thing works for you. So what do you think? And how do you think best we approach it? And the problem, we got the problem solved. So I think most importantly, if you find yourself in that position, it is because the leadership approach is self-centered, not community-centered. So I always am someone that sees leadership as people-centered, not self-centered. So I think if you find yourself in such situation, first of all, you need to rethink and researchize and of course think about what kind of approach you are giving to that community and what kind of leadership approach you are applying. So I think you need to apply new modus operandi, and I think most importantly, and in most cases, is self-centered leadership. So I think you need to apply new modus operandi, and I think you need to apply new idea and new perspective to the leadership. And of course, moving out is not of course the better thing to do. The better thing is of course to change the way you of course navigate your leadership style.
Thank you. I think that was a great answer. Lots of food for thought on different leadership styles, and that situation being a sign that there's maybe something not quite right with your leadership and how you're approaching things. Thank you. If anyone else has questions, please do raise your hands. Please put them in the chat. It's really great to hear from you and to ask those questions. While we wait for any questions to come in, Abubakar, I'd be really keen to hear what you think is the best thing about being a youth leader, and maybe flip that as well. What's the most challenging thing about being a youth leader?
So I think for me, I took leadership personal, and I think for me, the most exciting thing about being a youth leader is seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. What I mean is that future is secured. It's shed light to me that there is hope for a better life and there is hope for young people. And of course, inspiring more young people and inspiring people, communities, and giving back like life to young people that thinks that lost their life. What I mean by losing their life, losing hope, bringing back hopes to a lot of young people. I think that's most exciting. And one of the most important thing is how I'm able to impact the life of people, impact the life of young people, changing the narratives, inspiring young people, seeing the impossible being possible. I think that's the most exciting thing. And the most difficult thing about being a youth leader is it's very challenging. The fact that you are underestimated, the back and forth, you have to be in meetings, loving, sending emails, sending message, traveling. I mean, you don't have a life of your own at this stage. And young people think that you got it all. I mean, it's very challenging, of course, I can tell you, because this is a time that you need yourself the most, and young people need you the most, and the leadership needs you the most. And I think I cannot remember when last I rest. Even in the midst of holidays, you are working, struggling, trying to do one or two things. I think that's the most difficult thing. And of course, you get a lot of setbacks. Sometimes you push for something for a year or two, and in the end of the day, it didn't work out. You fail a lot of times. Sometimes I feel like going home to rest. I mean, it's a lot of quite challenging. But the most important thing that keeps me alive is from the beginning, I know it's going to be challenging. I know it's going to be challenging. That's what keeps me alive. And of course, despite it's challenging, it tells me that something good is happening.
Thank you. That's a great insight into your perspectives and some of the challenges that Abdulaziz brought up earlier as well. It's great to hear that kind of honesty around it sort of taking over your life at the moment. Do we have any questions from anybody else? It would be nice to hear some of yours rather than keep asking mine. Not just at the moment, that's absolutely fine. Abubakar, you talked a lot about, or you talked a bit about going to the community, hearing from people, what do they think, what do they want, especially when you were answering Innocent's question about if people aren't happy with you as a leader. It strikes me that there's likely to be some sort of, there might be conflict within the community. There might be different ideas about, you know, people wanting different things, thinking different things are best. I'd be really interested to hear how you approach those kinds of challenges when you're trying to kind of work for people and advocate for people, but there isn't necessarily a clear consensus from people about their concerns and beliefs and wishes.
I think the most important thing at the heart of all this struggle is at the end for the people. So I think having them on board is very important, and we oftentimes underestimate people perspectives, and because these people are the ones that lives in the community, lives with the challenges, and experience the everyday challenges that comes along the line. So I think keeping them in the loop would be a very vital to the leadership, and most importantly, building their skills in the process, building their skills of understanding. That's of course, this in the end of the day translates to your reality and your hopes. So I think most of the times people fail to navigate ways to deal with people in the grassroots. I mean, that is why it's very important to understand diversity, to understand that the way you think is probably not going to be the same way that other people is going to think. And if you understand that, it gives you a lot of ease while you're, of course, sorry, while you're, of course, dealing with a lot of challenges and communities. Like I mentioned, these people lives in with the realities of the challenges. So when you are in my community to solve my problem, you need to let me understand that I'm here for you, not I'm here to take something from you are here to take something from me. So I think probably that's what the challenge in balancing between the fact that I am here to help you get out of this challenge or get out of this problem. That's and most importantly, people at the rural communities sees it as whenever people comes from outside, they are here to make use of us or they are here to take something from us. But how you're able to relate, communicate, and let them understand that you're here to solve their pleasant challenges, it will give a lot of ease and let them contribute in the process. Safeguarding your projects, I think, in the community is very important, and their cooperation and collaboration is very important toward achieving success of the project.
Thank you. I think that point on collaboration has come up a lot today. It's a good takeaway. Abdulaziz, you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question. Abubakar, thank you very much for the elaborate presentations and educations on leadership and all of that. But I really want to know, how do you manage collaboration between two or more organizations? Like at times you might want to achieve a certain goal, but you require collaboration or the assistance of another company or another organization. And that organization you are trying to collaborate with have a leader which might not understand or see your idea. So how do you manage to convince them and convince the leader to bring his team to your particular location or your team to make a particular team or organization to achieve a certain goal? So how do you manage to do that, like bring two or more different teams together to achieve a certain goal? Notwithstanding, how do you manage that particular challenge of collaborating or collaboration?
Yeah, I think give you from an experience, working with other organizations and other people is the most effective way to execute a project. I can tell you, in 2022, I went to United Nations Climate Change Conference in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, and I met some guys from AWS Amazon, and these guys are working on a project about building an open source data platform for the world. I mean, and I think these guys, when we're back in Nigeria, they sent me an email and my friend, and we started to see how we can execute a project, how we can help agricultural sector of Nigeria. The idea is to identify physical risks and challenges that are affecting agricultural sector in Nigeria. Looking at the transition analysis and transition plan that the country said, the country needs to diversify from its dependent on oil, and the best way and the most important way to go back is the agriculture. And the agricultural sector faces a lot of numerous challenges from climate change. So these people bring us on board, and I can tell you, we started 2 organizations, and I can tell you today we are working with more than 20 organizations providing support, including people, organizations like AIDS Daily, organizations like Generation Humanity, Amazon, AWS, Linux Foundation, Google Earth, and a lot of many more organizations supporting us, including Tony Elemelu Foundation in Nigeria, including Climate Works Foundation, including AFDB, including experts from the World Bank, from Goldman Sachs, from like a lot of organizations, including McKinsey and Bloomberg. Experts from all these bodies are supporting this project. And right now, I can tell you, we developed agricultural outlook for Nigeria in 2 years. And tell me, without collaboration, without working in an environment, how can that going to be possible? So, I mean, the most important thing for everything to happen in the world has to be through collaboration. And this collaboration has to be a meaningful collaboration, creating a working group, setting up meetings, giving into timelines, and of course, giving into commitments. And I think you see the light of the project. But I can tell you, for all my career, I've never done a significant project myself. I've never won a grant myself as an organization. Whatever I did it in collaboration, and it works best for me. And one thing I do the most, and one thing, of course, that is my biggest strength, it's collaboration.
Thank you, Abubakar.
Thank you very much. And that was great to end on a question from one of you. Thanks, Abdulaziz. We are at 3:30, or in UK time anyway. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Thank you, Abubakar, so much for being here today, for sharing your insights and your expertise, and especially for taking the last half an hour on your own. It was really wonderful to have you. Thanks to our other speakers as well who've left now. I certainly have so much food for thought going forward. I've written some notes. I think themes that are coming out for me are passion, inclusivity, collaboration, and perhaps one that's come out the most for me is humility, the humility of these leaders. So that was such an inspiring conversation. Thank you very much for being here. I've put a feedback form in the chat. We really love to hear your feedback. It really helps us to prepare for future events and for future challenge years. And it's lovely to hear from you. So please do take a couple of minutes to fill in that form. And yeah, I will leave you to the rest of your days. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. And thank you so much for being here for a really great conversation. Thank you, Abubakar.